Great to see so many people here, and it's always, well, it is an absolute, I wouldn't say always, because I've never done this before, but it's an absolute privilege to follow Jill Williams on the stage here. So, as ever, Jill's always provided great food for thought, and hopefully we can start to discuss, because I think there's a few people on this stage who are already quite well on the redesign process as well, so it's a really nice follow-on from Jill. For those who don't know me, my name's Emily Grant. I'm a sheep farmer, not too far, just northwest of Perth. I work very closely with Innovis. I'll give them a shameless plug. There's a stand with some sheep on just up there. Go and say hello to them later on. I also work as an independent consultant. There are some familiar faces from, I had days with Quality Meat Scotland working on their grazing groups. So I did that for about 5-6 years, and then I went self-employed. So I still do similar things and work with farmers who are looking to basically make changes, particularly around pasture management for their sheep and beef systems. So I think Doug probably owes me a beer or two, because apparently Doug suggested my name to be chairing this session. He sent me a confessional text saying, "I'm really sorry I put your name forward to do this." So thanks, Doug.
Glad you do it.
Yeah, so no, it's great to be here. So a quick format, we've got an hour and 15 minutes, which will probably fly by. We've got a range of different farmers and farm types here. But really what I want to do is, first of all, a little bit of an introduction first. I'll do a very brief introduction of each of these farmers, but they'll get 5 minutes each just to really describe their journey and their kind of context. Why have they made change? What's driven those changes? Okay, so just alphabetically, it was the easier way for me to kind of jot everything down. So at the far end, we have David Aglen. David is farms manager at Balbirnie, who farms here in Fife. He manages 1,200 hectare mixed farm, 800 hectares of arable crops and 200 suckler cows, with various diverse rotations of cereals, spring beans, potatoes, brassica vegetables, key areas of focus include Regen agricultural practice, plant and soil health, and reduced inputs. David is also hosted, you're still current host, is that right, David, of Strategic Cereal Farms for AHDB since September 2020. Not that this is like a specific gender jump, but this is the way it worked alphabetically. B for Brewster. So we have Alex Brewster in the middle here. So Alex farms 4,500 hectares in Perthshire, not too far up the road from me. He runs 300 breeding cows, 1,700 ewes. He also has a flock of 4,000 free-range laying hens and some bees. So the eggs are all directly marketed from the layer system. He's also director of Powered Pasture, branded up, and also Toramore Clothing as well. Check the gilet. He's also a Nuffield scholar, and he was a QMS grazing group host back in the day, Alex. Good old days. Yeah. Okay. And next, C for Christie, we have Doug Christie. Doug farms 540 hectares, also in Fife, which is mixed arable, also organic. Actually, I should have said, David, are you organic? No, you're not. That's right. So Doug is. Many beef, so livestock, beef systems, all the way through to finish, and cereals as well. Some of the unit isn't organic, but I think you might touch on that anyway in your system as well. Yeah, okay, so arable rotation, there's certainly non-organic parts been under regenerative farming practices, and it says for at least 20 years, so pioneer of Doug, I think, working through these systems of nature-based farming. Ladies, we've got Denise Walton. Denise farms 660 hectares in Berwickshire and borders. Denise is a farmer ecologist and was also practiced as a landscape ecologist for 20 years, whilst also farming at Keelan for 30 years. The farm is organic and pasture for life certified. developing and implementing direct meat sales. So there's obviously the beef, there is also an on-farm butchery and charcuterie facility as well. So there are 150 breeding cows on the unit, all through to finish as well. Also buying some ewes for mutton and some veal calves as well come in for the direct sales. And last but definitely not least, we've got Nikki Yoxall. Nikki farms up in Aberdeenshire with James, her husband, North East Scotland. So Nikki and James have 40 cows themselves, but you also have up to 100 contract graziers as well. So yeah, co-runs Grand King Grazers, offering contract grazing services and working with land owners to facilitate ecological restoration using the power of cattle. So we've got quite a diverse range, obviously mixed arable as well as livestock-based systems. And I'll hold the hand up for sheep. There's one who's got sheep as well, which is maybe touch on that, and particularly if there's any questions. So what I'm going to do now is give everybody 5 minutes each on just kind of, describing their journey and their context. And more because we've just got some slides, I'm going to ask David to go first, because it's actually mostly just pictures, but it just means I don't lose things. And then we'll move on from there through to Denise as well. So David, for now, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Emily. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many people here on a nice day. I could have bored you with loads of slides, but I thought just put some pictures up. It's just slightly representative of where we are now as a business. Emily's given you an introduction of what we do at Balburney. We've got sheep now, cattle, veg and combinable crops. Our journey started probably about 10 or so years ago. It came from a position of two things mainly: deteriorating soil conditions and soil health, which came particularly off the back of two very wet seasons, 2011, which was the wettest year since Christendom, and then 2012 was the wettest year since 2011. And the result of that, with a lot of vegetables in the rotation, and we were intensively cultivating for our arable business side of the business, and we were set stocking the cows and all the things that we thought were the right things to do back then. And it just wasn't working. Crops were dire. I remember putting silage out to feed the cows because we'd basically run out of grass this day in 2012 and in the pouring rain, and it was pretty soul destroying, thinking, right, that's our starting wood to feed now. So we kind of started thinking, well, the arable bit was maybe going to be easier to turn around. So we set off trying to work out how to direct drill in Scotland. I'd been doing a bit down East Anglia for a few years before I came to Balburney in 2010, and thought we could make it work in Scotland, but it's been a challenge. Also, on top of that, in the years since then, we've moved on a bit in terms of we work with nature as farmers. No matter how much we kid ourselves, we are working with nature, and nature, everything we do as a farmer, whether it's cultivation, apply pesticides, worm our livestock, etc., nature in my lifetime as always gets the upper hand. We end up with worm resistance, we get pesticide resistance, our soils fight back or just run to the bottom of the hill when it rains too much in the winter. And we just seem to be losing the battle. And I thought, well, there must be a better way to do it. And I started, I suppose the internet was getting really popular by then. I was catching on to it. It's probably been around for a lot longer than that, but anyway. You could see what other people were doing around the world, and all these wonderful stories about people just putting their crops in the ground and it just grew and they didn't do anything to it, or they cut their fertiliser rates, or they started mob stocking their cattle, and you just thought this was absolute bonkers. But we sort of just started on the journey and off we went. We made a good few errors on the way, some costly errors, but I'm a great believer you don't learn anything unless you make mistakes. If you get it perfect all the time, you might think you're great, but you're not necessarily learning. Can you do more? Can you do less? Can you push it harder? So we've made a lot of errors, but we've got through it now. Finances were a dictator too. It's a large business, but large businesses, as many of you will know, take a lot of cash. So it was a case of how can we slim down the cost requirement for the business as well. and we've made a lot of progress on that front too. And I suppose to summarise, really, what we were looking for was that and where we are now, where our heads are now, was a less risky business model, and we were looking for the ability to add value to what we get for free, which is sunshine and water when it rains, and the soil. That's basically what we are as farmers. Everything in between is taking away and tweaking, but we just want to make the most of the stuff we get for nothing, is basically where we are. That do?
Perfect. It's like almost, it's bang on time as well, so that's brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Denise.
Great, thanks very much, Emily.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for asking me onto this panel. So, over 30 years ago, two things happened in kind of an 18-month period. First of all, Chris, my husband, and I got the chance as new entrants to farm 20 acres in a small holding. And then also I was practicing as an ecologist, and I won a contract to survey on foot the Northumberland National Parks. So I got another 5 ecologists, and we walked across Northumberland National Park for the most fabulous 6 months. And then also at the same time I was doing environmental impact assessments of the Northumberland coastal plain for open cast industry. And I saw the direct comparison between Otterburn MOD range and basically a very foot off the pedal approach to farming, because farmers were earning from the MOD every time a bomb was dropped on a few ewes kind of thing. Well, actually it does happen. And so really serendipity came together within that period. And having done that work, when Christie and I got the chance to the 20 acres, I knew absolutely there was no way we were not going to farm agroecologically. So obviously the thinking then was quite immature and quite naive, and actually sometimes naivety is a blessing. And so we've sort of over the years have honed our approach to agroecology. We very soon, both of us, we were both working full time at the time, and small family and all the rest. We wanted to sell direct. We wanted to have control of the market. We just had the sense, seeing our neighbours, that actually subsidies and the brown envelope farming, which is what it was called then, was suppressing innovation, suppressing excitement, depressing, what farming really is. It's a journey of joy without, and I know it's hugely challenging. We took a lot of risks. We've had a lot of, forgive me, squeaky bum moments in the last 30 years. But anyway, it's what we did. And selling direct has also directed the way we farmed. And then within about 5 years, our neighbour knocked on the door of our small holding house and asked us to farm with her. So 20 acres became 200 acres. Then Peelham came on the market. And with our now retired business partner, Amanda, we purchased Peelham. So within a fairly short space of time from new entrant smallholders, with this absolute determination to be agroecological because of what I'd seen, to 670 acres. That was a very big change the way we kind of approached things. And my husband stopped his job in Edinburgh. He was an agricultural accountant. And when we built our farm butchery, I actually stopped my ecological work to focus entirely on the farm. So Peelham was fairly decrepit. It was wall-to-wall arable, no fences, very poor infrastructure, buildings falling down. The whole farm had been sort of November to November short-term grass lets or grazing lets. Actually, Peelham had a caretaker on it. So it was, it was ground zero really in terms of what we needed to do. But we knew we needed to go mixed because we definitely were on the journey of direct selling. We built the butchery. And 2005, because we could afford it, we went organic, following the McSharry reforms and all that kind of stuff. No agrochemicals, oof, finish. 2015, by chance, I learned about Pasture for Life, and I thought, that really zings, that really fits into what we wanted to do. So we went Pasture for Life. So now we're organic, Pasture for Life certified. And where we are in our journey, one more minute, I have chewed this. So it's a bit tatty. Does everyone recognise this? It's the Europe beef grading system. And I know that HTV want to stop using it, but I just thought, as an exercise, to demonstrate that we're not a very productive farm. We go up, 200 to 700 feet, that with no input, this is the kind of where we are in our journey, with no inputs, no chemicals, grain only. I've just trucked, and it's coming to my rescue again. Freudian slip. Grass only. And just with all the beef that we've put through our butchery since January, and they're all in this green area, which is high UK demand, premium prices, best returns. So on the system that we've got, we can actually do that, which is actually producing beef to the spec. So that's really where we are in our journey. Still got a long way to go, still lots to do, but there you go. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Alex Brewster. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Emily. Morning, everybody. Thanks for asking me to speak here. It's been quite humbled honoured to tell how we've got to where we've got to. I celebrated another birthday a few days ago, and I did a panel session at Groundswell, and I'm considerably less hungover this morning than I was 48 hours ago. But I look back over a sort of period of 5, 10, 15, 20 years. 20 years ago, I just walked out of Edinburgh with a sort of conventional education and had been taught this is how we farm, and it was all about first chem, feed programs, genomics, all this really, really amazing stuff. And Emily's piece of paper there, how satisfied were you doing what you were doing? 10 years ago, when I transferred it and started being more expressive of thought and mindset, 10 years ago, my expression of UK agriculture was one. And I get no satisfaction from it. I didn't enjoy it. It was the same old shit. It was a different day. It was the same excuses, and there was no, for me, real emotional feedback from that. And then along came QMS grazing groups, Emily, some other well-known people within there as well.
Michael Blanche.
Michael Blanche. Probably never heard of him. And it all started off with one year drill and a spade. That was it. There was no major clever strategy. We didn't really know what we were doing. But again, David touched on it too. It was 2012, I think, was a pretty rubbishy spring. As well, we were backed up, no grass, starting to throw animals together because we knew other options when they shut fields up. You built a wire. It was really low-tech stuff. You walked away for 21 days because we're thinking about rotational grazing rather than set stocking, and then you moved the wire to stock, you did 21 days rest, you dug a hole with a spade. Now we've all got spades. And then we started looking at soils and understanding, we knew nothing about them, nothing. And this is the sad demise of where we came from. We were an agricultural business producing food, but we were ignorant. Really ignorant to the processes that made it all work. So you dug a hole, you opened it up, you had to look at it, you found a few worms, and you started to realise that on the other side of the fence, where you're sort of set stocking, that there was a difference. And then I suppose the curiosity of mindset, what's happened, what's changed. We were big into EIDs, breeding programs, capturing a lot of data, weighing lambs more than cattle at that point. But the lambs and the sheep that we got onto the clover sward for transportation and grazing weaned 3 kilos heavier at 100 days. Farmers are pretty good at economics. It didn't take you long to figure out there's a bit of mileage in this. And then from then on, it's just been a process of curiosity, experimentation, challenge. We're always challenged with cash and time. But I think the biggest hurdle that we all have, and I still have to a degree, is that confidence. That when we hit a buffer or we hit a barrier or we get a challenge, that we have the confidence to step forward, be bold, be brave, and give something a go. And I think Nikki kind of got it right in sports plan when they said, just do it. Let's stop overthinking what we're doing. So over the last 10 years, and I was also told at the start of this journey, one, I had my business model ripped to bits by a Kiwi vet who that wasn't a good day for my self-esteem, to be honest. And then I was also told by somebody who's quite involved with the National Farmers Union. That I would never make it work. And what we're trying to do in an LFA landscape, and because it's so much this is talking about arable systems, it's not really talked about so much in an upland landscape where we are home is a 1,000-hectare operation, but it's only 13% improved pasture, and the rest of it's rocks and bracken and heather. We would never make it work if we were going to fail. And I take great delight 10 years later in having not failed and having answered some of the questions that other people are now talking about, the space that we're in. We've changed livestock classes, we've moved a bit less sheep, a bit more cows, it's given us more control, more impact on the landscape. But the satisfaction of what we do at home now is probably tenfold greater than it was 10 years ago. We've stripped out the chemistry, we've stripped out a lot of the porons, we've stripped out a lot of the drenches, and the end goal now is not in the space we're now starting to work in, is this epigenetic change within the genes at home, whether it's microbial in soil, whether it's pastoral plants, or whether it's the livestock that we're managing. And that's the real drive, is fitting together all of these synergies. And I think the realisation is that as farmers, I probably see myself more as much as an ecologist now, as I do see myself as a farmer. But primarily we're managing microbiomes, and we're trying to learn as much as we can to join all these dots. And at the end of the day, the satisfaction comes from producing food, because we try and retail as much as we can to butcher shops and other bits and pieces. The feedback we get at the local level about how great that meat tastes, how good our eggs are, and that's the satisfaction. We're nutritionists, we produce food.
Nikki, the floor is yours.
I thought I was just going to be able to sit down. Thank you so much, Emily. And also, I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but I cannot believe I'm sitting on a panel with like farming heroes of mine. It's a little bit overwhelming. And then looking out and going, oh no, there's loads of farming heroes also in the audience. It's terrifying. So yeah, we, as Emily said, farm up in northeast Aberdeenshire. It's taken me a while to accept that what we do is farming, or that I am a farmer, because actually, there's a lot of people who would suggest that what we're doing isn't really farming. And I guess our whole approach is to find that space in between what some folk want to call rewilding and what some people want to call agroecology, and basically just produce some of the best beef that you can of wilder, beautiful, abundant, diverse spaces. And I suppose when you're a new entrant, first generation, and you move to a new place, so you moved 600 miles north from Sussex to northeast Aberdeenshire, and had been inspired by a brilliant farm manager at the Ag College that I used to work at, to understand that actually everything that our cattle might need is already there, and actually what we need to do is learn to get out of the way. So I was hugely inspired by this brilliant guy called Dan, and then came up to Scotland, bought a small holding with 18 acres, and we knew that we wanted some cattle, and we met another brilliant guy called Rob Havard. I wish I'd met some other brilliant women earlier on. It's always kind of ruined my story that men got involved, but yeah, a brilliant guy called Rob, who's a great friend and a great inspiration, and he introduced us to holistic management. And again, developed by Matt Pallas-Avery, but there we go. Holistic management for us has been, and I don't say this lightly, genuinely life-changing. And as a framework, it has allowed us to understand how we want to produce food, how we want to manage landscapes, what we want our life to look like. And so we have been applying that initially on a very small scale, and we live on a dead-end lane, but we saw people driving past. We're like, who are these people that keep driving past and slowing down and having a look and seeing what we're doing? Because these weird people have moved up from England, and they've got some funny little cows with horns, and they'd got this electric fence that all looks a bit fancy. And actually then what happened was that neighbours started saying, oh, that looks good, could you come and do that on our land? And then people further away started asking us to do that for them. And so this idea of developing a grazier business, there aren't many sort of grazier, lots of farms will take on additional contract grazing, but setting up as a grazier isn't something that's that popular. And so for us it was very much about enabling the landscape that we live in this beautiful valley on the River Devon, to enable that landscape to regenerate, to be abundant, to be diverse, to be a beautiful place to live and to produce food. And so, you know, via various circuitous routes, we've ended up working with a big rewilding company on the estate that is essentially, they bought our view. And so I thought, right, I'm a bit worried they're going to change that. So yeah, we very quickly went over and sort of said, you know, you definitely need some large herbivores in your system, and guess what, I've got a few, we could bring them over. So we've started now working with this rewilding company and are slowly but surely shifting their understanding that wilder landscapes can include regeneratively restored landscapes, and that we don't have to have rewilding or food, we can bring these things together. And so for us it's very much about how do we demonstrate that the uplands can be these kind of, they can be productive, and they can be productive not in a kind of conventional sense, but they can produce food, they can produce public goods, they can create community engagement, and there can be community prosperity. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. How am I doing for time? 1 minute, okay. And that has led me, and I'm very, very privileged to also work for Pasture for Life. Come and see us over in Tent 4 on the hill, because we'll be doing some sessions throughout the day. And through Pasture for Life, and then the work that I get to do in Scotland with some amazing farmers, has kind of led me on this path to now, I'm also now doing a PhD, and the kind of underpinning framework of my research is about rethinking the way we learn. So doing stuff like this, reconnecting with nature. So, I mean, it kind of does what it says on the tin. Pretty much just going out there and enjoying the flowers. It's very simple to do that. And then restructuring our institutions, so direct sales, thinking about how we can engage with markets differently. And it's been really interesting to kind of think that I've kind of come full circle from turning up in this little valley, thinking how can we connect with people, how can we enjoy what's around us, and how can we farm in a different way, given that we've got no money, how do we do that? And actually I've now kind of, you know, 6 years later, managing to research it. So that's serendipitous, but also maybe there's some process in that. But anyway, I'm waffling. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I farm not far from here, 15 minutes away from here, on a 540 hectare farm, of which a third of that converted to organic in 2006, and that's mainly livestock-based part of the farm, and then the rest of it is basically been on our arable stockless rotation for the last, since I started farming in 1995, 1996. Actually, before that, I was given the opportunity to have a small postage stamp bit of land. My father said, go and make a living out of that. And I had 25 outdoor sows, and had a pig enterprise, which was great. The reason I went down the pig route is my father didn't know anything about pigs. But he's been very supportive since. And, anyway, in 1999, I went headfirst into conservation agriculture, it was called then, on the arable part of the farm. And that's basically regenerative agriculture without the bells and the whistles. And I can still probably consider myself a conservation agricultural proponent. Regenerative agriculture is good, it's caught the imagination of everyone, including beginning to catch attention of everyone just now, and it can only be a good thing. And it is certainly the right direction. It looks like the government are wanting a lot of farmers in Scotland to go into. Anyway, I had a lot of, I learned, there wasn't much support then in the late 90s, early 2000s on minimising cultivations, and the other proponents of conservation agriculture which was diversity and so on, increased diversity using cover crops over the winter. So there was a lot of mistakes made, and like David said earlier on, I did learn a lot through the mistakes that I that happened on the farm, like tilling when it was very wet. I certainly wouldn't do that now. And it's not all about tillage. It was, I suddenly realized that you can't do any one of the things, the principles of regenerative agriculture, in isolation. You've got to go the whole hog. You've got to try to increase the diversity, like Joel was saying earlier on. You've got to keep living roots to the soil the whole time, and try to not have any bare soil over the winter or any time of the year. And it's progressed into trying. I mean, change is very difficult, but trying new things the whole time. So I've been doing intercropping for 10 years in various combinations of crops. Certainly cover cropping, winter cover cropping. If I can get a winter cover crop in, I get it in. And direct drilling for the last 7 or 8 years. And the one thing that's missing there is the livestock on the arable stockless part of the farm. I can't bring my organic livestock onto my conventional arable part of the farm. So I'll just move on to the organic part of the farm and what's happened there. That's mainly permanent grassland. I do have, there was an area I was growing organic crops. There's still a small area of organic crops on that area of land. But I had the fortune of, in 2014, of going to the States and doing a study tour around the States with Frederick Thomas, who's a cover crop, with 40 French farmers and 2 English farmers. And it was a real eye-opener on, and this is in the Midwest, Montana and North Dakota and Minnesota, and went to research at research institutes, but most of the places we went to farms. And boy, oh boy, it captured the imagination. And that was where, instilled mob grazing, they were calling it there, and that's instilled my interest in mob grazing. And it wasn't until 5 years later, I was speaking to Clem Sanderson on an intercropping thing, and she was saying, just do it, Doug. Just do it. So she gave me a good kick, so I just did it. So 2019, I went down the adaptive multi-paddock grazing route, or mob grazing route, which is moving the cattle every day, daily moves. And that was, anything of the whole lot I've done, that has been a total no-brainer. It cost a bit for changing the infrastructure on the farm, but it's been a winner. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff.